What's up, guys? JD here, and on today's show, I am talking with Jason Fried, founder of 37 Signals. You know them from Basecamp, Hey.com, Once.com, and a lot more. Jason is an absolute renegade when it comes to the world of software and tech and entrepreneurship. Back when everybody was crazy about raising venture capital, having big valuations, Jason was quietly keeping to himself, making tens of millions of dollars, bootstrapping, didn't raise a dollar. That's not totally true. He did raise a bit of money from a guy named Jeff Bezos, but that's a whole other story. Jason has got so much interesting stuff to say about how to build a company with no money, how to grow a company, how to keep it simple, and just how to do it for so long. He's got so much longevity to him. So I think you guys are going to love this conversation. Before we get to it, if you're new here, my name's Jon Davids. I've helped my clients make over $200 million working with my marketing agencies. You can learn more about that at jondavids.com. While you're there, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. I send out content just like this. And if you like what you're hearing here, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, leave a rating, and tell your friends. And now let's get to my conversation with Jason Fried. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be back, John.
It's awesome to see you again. So a lot of the time on this podcast, I like talking to entrepreneurs about kind of how they do what they do. And you're someone who's super interesting on that exact note because you're kind of counter to what everyone else does. And you sort of, you raise a flag and you say, everyone's doing this, but that's actually stupid. You should do it like this. And so this is going to be a lot of fun. Let's start with kind of the big thing, the big announcement you made in the last couple of months, which is the idea that recurring revenue software and the fact that we have to keep paying $100 a month every month forever for something that we bought, 3 years ago is kind of stupid and outdated. What's your take on that, and why are you making a pivot?
Well, okay, I'm not against subscriptions, but I think there should be options, right? Basically, what's happened over the past, 10, 15 years is that every piece of software has become a subscription service, which has served companies really well, companies who make the software, because recurring revenue is a good thing to have. It's very predictable. You can do a lot with it. You don't have to always keep looking out for the brand new, next customer, that sort of thing. But I think it's taken choice away from consumers or buyers. I don't even like the word consumers, but buyers of this software, primarily on the business side, although this is true on personal side as well. But that you're basically whatever you end up getting, you're basically paying for in perpetuity. And if you decide not to pay, you're essentially evicted, and it's over. All your stuff is gone. And even though you paid maybe thousands and thousands and thousands, or tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands in some cases, all the stuff you put in there is gone if you don't pay your bill. And I get the idea behind it. It's easy in a sense. You sign up and you're running. You don't have to run your own infrastructure, the whole thing. But we just think that model is, one way, and there should be a way where you can just buy the software like you used to, install it on your own servers, and run it yourself and pay for it once. This is the way software used to be. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it should be an option. So we launched this thing called Once, which is a new brand essentially. And underneath that brand, I'll be making multiple products. Their first product is called Campfire. It's essentially a group chat tool like Slack, like Teams. And it's $399 once. You download it, you install it on your own hardware. It's one command. You just run this one command in a terminal. So it requires a tiny bit of technical expertise, but very, very minimal. And you're done. No more paying for anything. Updates come every night if there are updates. So it still updates automatically. And you're done. And, for those who are sick of paying month after month after month after month for something like this and would prefer to pay for it once, I think Campfire is a great option. If you don't want to do that, you've got your other options, which are the existing, subscription-based services. So it's time that companies can take control of their costs again and sort of understand what they're buying and know that they don't have to buy it month after month after month after month.
How do you give people updates if it's not on your servers? How does that work?
Yeah, so the system, and by the way, I should also say that when you buy this, you get all the code too. So you get everything. You can see the code, you can go through the code, you know exactly what you're getting. You can mess around with it. You can modify it. You can do all the things. Every night at 2 a.m., your installed version, and you can turn this off, by the way, if you don't even want to have this, but the default is it pings our server and says, hey, is there any updates? Like I have, version 1.04. Is there a 1.05 out? If so, it'll download that automatically and install it automatically in the middle of the night. So it's just up to date. But again, you can turn that off if you'd rather do it manually or not do it at all. That's the other nice thing about installable software is that you can say like, I like this version. I don't want it to change. I'm happy with where it is. And maybe at this point, we're going to branch it and make our own version off of it. And I don't want it to change. I don't want the stuff to get overwritten or thrown out. I just want to have my own version. So that's the nice thing about the control you get when you buy something like this.
So $399, one-time purchase. How do you, or have you even thought about the economics of, hey, if we charged $8 a month per user, that would be the equivalent of $399 over the course of 4 years? Like, have you done that math?
Yeah, and we used to sell a service called Campfire as a subscription. And of course, Basecamp's a subscription and Hey is a subscription. And we'll make other subscription-based software as well moving forward. But for us, this is an experiment. It's a return to a simpler time in many ways, although for the past handful of years, it was harder to do this, but now it's gotten a lot easier. Technology's come a long way. And so installing your own software and running your own stuff is actually quite simple. And we just want to create this option. So we're not interested in hosting this for our people. Like if you want a hosted chat service, take your pick. There are lots and lots of them. If you want to own your own chat and own your own data and have nobody have a chance at seeing anything and being in complete control of your communications, or if you want to have a splinter group where maybe you're running on Slack for the most of your company, but there's a small team that wants its own thing, this is a killer option for that. And it is what it is. It's $400 once.
Did you go into this thinking about it as a profit motive type thing, or was it more of just a thought experiment? Let's see how this works, whatever. Or do you actually think, no, there's a business case here?
Well, I mean, there's a business case. We've sold close to $400,000 worth of it so far. Okay. So,
Over how long?
a few months. Basically, I can't remember exactly when we launched it, but a few months. So we're pretty happy with that so far. It's pretty good. And the thing that's interesting is like you sell one copy. We used to price it at $299. We just went up to $399. So for the most of the time, it's been $299. That was like the introductory price. $300 once. Hey, our email service costs $100 a year. So for every copy of Once we sell, that's 3 years of Hey. And for those 3 years of Hey subscription that someone would buy, like we have a lot of maintenance to do. We have to make sure all the infrastructure is up. There's a lot of customer service and support. It's very expensive to run an email service. So actually, this is a very profitable, incredibly profitable business, the Once method, as long as we can sell enough copies, because there's basically no marginal cost. Each copy we sell is just pure profit. There's no maintenance in terms of hosting, servers, any back-end work. It's so straightforward and simple. There's basically no customer service required whatsoever. And it's just essentially pure profit for every copy sold. Now, we have to sell a lot of copies to make, millions of dollars to make this really a legitimate use of our time. But it was also just simply an experiment to see what would happen. And we're pretty happy with how it started. And we're going to be making multiple, Once products moving forward. So we'll see how it all shakes out over time. We might be too early, it's a good chance like this is actually too early. And we may have to wait a few years for something like this to actually be accepted, which is common with the things we do. We typically do things earlier than most. And sometimes that means we have to wait. Sometimes it means our timing is off. Sometimes it means we hit the jackpot. Like you just don't know. So you don't know until you throw the dice. So here we are.
And because you already have a few things working, you can afford to take a bet and see what happens. Was a big part of this. I remember like a year ago or a year and a half ago, your whole thing was getting off cloud services and getting off cloud servers, like specifically AWS. We don't want to be paying Jeff Bezos $300,000 a year, probably a lot more than that for you, for these ongoing services. Was that sort of the impetus for doing this?
It came afterwards. So we got off the cloud first. But when we did that, we realized like, we're running our own stuff again. This is not as hard as we thought it was going to be. Like things have gotten a lot easier. Maybe we should make software for people like this too, who are interested in running their own stuff. And you don't even have to run your own stuff. You can get like a DigitalOcean, which is like a shared hosting account for like $12 a month and run Campfire on that. So you're paying them $12 a month, but that's it. There's not like a per user charge. So, if you have 100 people using Slack, you're paying hundreds or thousands of dollars per month. This is like $13 a month just to host the thing, and then everything else is free after that. So we kind of saw that like this is not as hard as it used to be, and let's give people an option who are interested in going down this road and who are curious about this and who haven't learned helplessness. There's this sense of like learned helplessness out there right now where it's like, well, we can't do anything hard anymore. And it turns out this isn't that hard, actually. So like if you want to experiment and tinker again, which is one of the beautiful things about computers, especially when we got into computers, like tinkering was a fun thing to do. You kind of like, it was a hobbyist thing. You kind of figured stuff out. You didn't really know what was going to work or what wasn't. Now what we're basically doing is putting a credit card into a form, and like that's all we're doing with computers. And it's kind of neat to say like, what if you want to explore this some more and look at the code and learn? And a lot of people have bought Campfire because they just want to see a really beautifully built Rails app from the people who invented Rails. Like we put so much care and attention into the code base, HTML, CSS, and Rails and JavaScript. Everything we've done is open for you to see. Nothing is hidden from you. So for someone who makes products and is curious about how we make products, there's no better look than to look at the actual code itself. And so that's one of the other benefits of selling software this way. Hosted products you can't see the code. You don't even know what the product's doing. A lot of trust is put in the vendor. This, you can like trace every keystroke. Where's it going? What's it doing? How's it work? And that's kind of a cool thing too.
There's so much obsession around efficiency and optimization and the idea that you should only spend your time on the most high value tasks. And I think it's almost like a sales pitch also from the people who are incentivized to sell it to you, to say, hey, do what you're great at. Leave this stuff to us. Do what you're great at. Well, it turns out the stuff that I'm paying you a lot of money for isn't that hard for anybody to do. And so, but yeah, going back to this idea of like optimization and efficiency, as you said, it's a good idea to have unstructured time to tinker. And it's in that time that you get your best ideas. So just staying on track and never taking the time to be creative really probably isn't good in the long run.
I agree with that 100%. I also think it's just good to return to some basics, which is looking at the way your company spends money. So if you start to look at like we actually asked people on Twitter this before we launched Campfire, like what's your Slack bill or Teams bill? And I was just shocked, like 6,000 a month, 9,000 a month, 1,200 a month, 800 a month. I'm like, for chat, chat's free everywhere else in the world. WhatsApp is free. iMessage is free. Whatever Android Messenger is free. Facebook, whatever Messenger. These things are free. Chat to talk to people is free, essentially. Why in the business context is it costing you thousands of dollars a month or tens of thousands of dollars a year? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, Campfire is not free, but it's $400 once. It's essentially free, all things considered. If you amortize it out for even a couple of years, it's like, nothing per month, essentially, right? And it's just like, you should look at how you're spending your money as a company, and not just on chat, but on anything that you're using. Are we spending too much on this? Are we getting our money's worth? Are we paying rent in perpetuity, but not really seeing anything change? I know products tend to add more features over time, which is one justification that they often make to make things subscription based. Well, you're getting more stuff all the time. That's why it's worth paying for all the time. The thing is that I don't know, 90%, maybe more of the value is in the absolute basics you got on day one. So like the basic value in Teams or Slack or anything else is just like to be able to talk to your teammates. Yeah, I can do some other stuff too, but to be able to chat in real time and ask a quick question, that's most of the value. So to say like, yeah, we're getting more stuff, but how much am I paying for the simple thing that's free everywhere else in the world? I think it's worth asking. So this is also like a way to inject a different way of thinking about costs into people's minds in a way that hasn't been considered for quite a long time. We just kept racking up the bills, signing up for subscriptions, paying in perpetuity, and not thinking that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not sure.
This is so close to my heart right now because I just went through the process, and I'm doing this every quarter now. I'm going through our Visa bill, our Amex bill, and I'm going, what charges are coming in every month? $50 here, $200 there, and then altogether it's thousands of dollars. And the reason I find it so beneficial, yes, you save a bunch of money, but there are costs that come up all the time that kind of, when they first come up, you look at, I got to give somebody a raise. This vendor needs more money. And that really, you think about that. Oh, do I want to pay this guy an extra $100 a week? But then when you look at your bill and you say, well, I'm paying that vendor that SaaS software $100 a week. I've never even used it. And you start to chop away at things that you don't need at all of a sudden you realize there's a whole bunch of money that could go somewhere where it's really useful.
100%.
Um,
The thing I was going to add really quick last, I know I'm kind of going on this, but people don't look at their costs enough. There's all this talk, in our entrepreneurial world, in the circles you're in, the circles I'm in, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. It's all about like revenue. Everyone's talking about revenue. It's all revenue, and selling and revenue. There's very little talk about cutting your costs or watching your costs or paying attention at the very least to how much you're spending on X, Y, or Z. I think it's very prudent, even if you're doing really well in business, just to pay attention to the cost side of the equation. It's good for discipline. It's just good because times aren't always going to be great. And just to get used to exercise the muscle of like, is this worth it? Is this worth it? Is this worth it? Is a good question to ask.
That takes me to your company, which is one of the most enviable software SaaS bootstrap companies out there. And you were doing it long before anybody was talking about this stuff. I mean, you were doing it when it was cool to raise VC, when it was a badge of honor to say, we just raised 17 million from Andreessen Horowitz. And you were like, hey, I'm just making a bunch of money here by myself. And that's what you were doing during the whole craze. So I have a couple questions about the business today. Let's start with why don't you just describe? So for people who don't know, what is your business today?
So we sell Basecamp, which is a project management tool. Been around for about 20 years. It's gotten a lot better over the years, as you'd expect. That's a SaaS tool. We sell something called Hey, which is an email service, and a calendar, which is also a SaaS tool. So we're a software company, and now we sell Campfire under the Once brand. And we're making another Once product, which will be out in about 8 weeks. And then we're going to try and work on 2 more products this year, which probably won't be out till next year. So we make software products, and we have historically done them as SaaS tools. We actually were one of the pioneers back in 2004 when we launched Basecamp initially, one of the first SaaS tools. So we've been big believers in this model. Prior to that, though, we were a web design firm. So we were doing web design for hire for other companies.
And you flipped to the SaaS model because you had, I'm guessing, a client that asked for something, or you built something for yourself, and then you said we should sell this?
We built it for ourselves. Yeah, we built Basecamp for ourselves to manage the projects we were doing for clients because we were just using email and just it was a mess. We were dropping the ball as people tend to do when they're doing a lot of things and don't have a system and an organizational principle behind how they're organizing the information and collaborating and sharing. So we built this thing for ourselves, used it with our clients, and they kept saying, "What is this thing? Like, what is this? We could use this too." I'm like, okay. Light bulb goes on over your head. You're like, "There's an idea here," and then we turned it into a product. And we decided to charge monthly for it. In fact, what's funny is we tried to charge annually for it initially. The bank wouldn't let us. The bank wouldn't let us because we had to get a merchant account. This is way back in the day before Stripe and before this was easy, okay? And Braintree. And we had to go to Chase Bank and say, hey, we want to accept credit cards. And there's like, this arduous form, like you literally could drop the papers on the desk and it would make a sound. It was like this thick stack of papers and credit checks and the whole thing. And they came back saying, you want to do what exactly? Because you had to describe your business. We're like, well, we want to sell this software online and charge monthly for people to use it. They're like, what do you mean? Because this wasn't a business model really. And they're like, they said no to that because they didn't want to take on the risk of us charging someone for many, many, many months, the customer then quitting, and then we not being around. We're a fly-by-night organization at this point, and then Chase is on the hook basically for fraud or whatever it would be. That's what we want to do annually. So we want to do it annually, and they're like, we can't charge $1,000, and then maybe you're out of business in 2 months. Customers are going to come back to us asking for a refund, whatever. So they said you're going to have to do this month to month to month to month to make the charges smaller, to make the risk smaller for us being Chase Bank. And so we're like, okay, fine, we'll try that. So that's actually what kicked off the monthly subscription model for us and for many, because the bank wouldn't let us charge annually.
That is so funny. So you wanted to charge by the year, but like you said, if someone pays up front and then you're out of business for 2 months, there's 10 months worth of money that now Chase would owe them. And so the whole monthly recurring revenue model came because the bank wouldn't let you charge on the annual basis. That's ridiculous.
That was it. So we're like, what about if we do it monthly? They're like, we could probably do that, because now we're talking about, $19 a month or $29 a month or something. And we just like had to beg really to make them see that this was okay. We're like, magazines have subscriptions, and like subscriptions aren't new. It's just, yeah, their software subscriptions are kind of new.
It's
So
funny
anyway, we got
because
it done.
if they
Yeah.
had said no, like we might have weekly it might be WRR, might have been
Right.
the thing.
Who knows, right? I mean, eventually I'm assuming this would have changed, but initially we just were like, we have to do whatever we can. And the funny part about this is that we were ready to launch the product, but because we had to change the way billing worked, we didn't actually even have a billing system. So we shipped Basecamp. We launched Basecamp to customers with actually no way to bill them. So we had 30 days in which to build a billing system so we could begin to charge them on a monthly basis. So it's kind of a fun, like the ultimate constraint driven process. Like, okay, we're shipping this product, we're selling it, although we're not collecting because we don't ask for people's credit cards. We didn't build anyone for 30 days. I think we did ask for the credit cards, but we didn't build them for 30 days. So we had 30 days. Otherwise, it was on us. We'd be losing money. So it's kind of a fun little challenge there.
And then how did the company evolve? So you have this product, and I should say for context, you describe when we say how big is your company, you say tens of millions in revenues and profits. So
Yes.
it's a big company. How did you get to that level? Was that basically one product that took you there, or was it a few different products that got you there?
Yeah, I mean, Basecamp is our big winner, so it's kind of a 10x product. But we've had a number of decent ones. So Highrise is our second biggest product, which is a CRM tool, which we launched back in 2007. We still offer to existing customers, but we don't sell it anymore. But that was a more than $10 million business for a while. It's not anymore because we don't sell it anymore. So there's just natural churn over time, but it's still a multi-million-dollar business. Backpack was a multi-million-dollar business, which was another early product of ours. So, but many of those aren't around anymore in terms of selling them. We still exist. We still support them for existing customers, but we don't improve them, and we haven't sold them for years. So
How do you
Basecamp,
decide what to keep going, what to cut off? Like, is there a lot of thought in there, or it just kind of happens?
well, there was this time where we decided to reduce our. So the company used to be called 37 Signals. It is again today, but for a number of years, I think it was about 6 years in the middle, it was called Basecamp. And what we decided was at some point we're like, you know what? Let's just focus on Basecamp. We had 4 products at the time, actually a few others too. We had a relatively small company. We were 20, 30 people, I think it was, maybe, yeah, something like that at the time. And we're like, we just can't do 4 things at once. We're not doing them well. We're letting some of these die on the vine in a way where we're not getting back to them. It doesn't feel good. So let's consolidate and get back into Basecamp. So we kind of made that decision all at once. We like took Campfire, which was our chat tool at the time, rolled that into Basecamp. So that became part of Basecamp. We actually spun off a couple products, Know Your Company, which is now called Canopy. We spun that off to a different team. We spun off Highrise. We eventually reabsorbed that. And then we decided like Backpack, we're just going to support, but we're not going to sell anymore. So we made all these decisions at once, which actually made it a lot easier to make. Just here's the plan. Basecamp, we're going all in. We're going to change the name of the company to Basecamp so everyone knows we're all about Basecamp. So we know we're all about Basecamp. And that's all we're going to do. Let's fold these other things in, spin these other things out. Let's just make a grand change. Now, since then, we launched Hey, which is doing very, very well, multi-million-dollar business. And because of that, we went back and renamed the company to 37 Signals again. So we're now a multi-product company. Now we have Campfire again as a standalone thing. We're going to make more products and more products and more products. So now it makes sense to jettison the Basecamp name as the name of the company. And now we're back to 37 Signals. But it's funny. Like I had this idea to consolidate around Basecamp, and I just called in a few people from like we don't have an executive team in the traditional sense, but like 3 or 4 of the other kind of long timers at the company. And I just made this pitch. I'm like, look, let's just simplify. Like we all know, like, let's just be honest. We all know we can't get back to this. We can't get back to that. We're doing too many things at once. We don't have enough people, but we don't want to grow in a big way to service all the products and the customers. Could we just consolidate? And it was like this big sigh of relief. So it was a huge decision, but it was also like, there's oftentimes these decisions that everybody is ready to make, but no one is willing to make. So I just made it, and everyone's like, yes, that makes sense. And it was like all this weight off our shoulders. So
That's the job of the CEO to make. I should write that down.
It's actually the job of the founder.
The founder.
I think this would have been a hard decision, I think, for a CEO to make. This was a decision that a founder could make, in a sense, because it was pretty radical. I wrote this thing about the job of a founder is to inject risk into a company. The job of the CEO is to sort of mitigate risk, I think, in most cases. CEOs typically don't take big risks. They sort of manage risk. A founder should be like, no, we're going in this direction. I've got this gut instinct. I'm letting it ride. I have the most to risk here. So if a founder who owns most of the company makes a call, they have the most to lose too. So they just have a certain position in which they can force big changes through that would be very hard for other people to stomach in a sense. But because they still have most of the risk on their own plate, people are willing to follow essentially.
Quick break so I can tell you about my new book, Marketing Superpowers. Build a brand so good that getting customers feels like magic. I have spent over a decade working with over 20,000 influencers, Instagrammers, YouTubers, celebrities, seeing how they connect with audiences, seeing how they build their own personal brands, and kind of dissecting exactly how it works. And then a lot of these people wind up launching businesses and they do so well. How are they able to do it? Is it just because they're famous? No, there's a lot more to it than that. I have dissected it. I have analyzed it. I have put it in a book for you called Marketing Superpowers, available right now at marketingsuperpowersbook.com. Now, this is not a book about becoming an influencer. It's about the influencer playbook and how they launch brands, building a community, building a movement, building a connection with your customer like no other. Get it all at marketingsuperpowersbook.com. You can also get a free chapter there and tons of bonus content when you buy the book. Available for ebook, audio, and of course, get your physical copy, marketingsuperpowersbook.com. I will see you in the pages of this book. Do you regret any of, if you look back at the 4, 5, 6, 7 companies that you jettisoned, are there any that you look back and go, oh shit, we probably should have done that? Or this could have worked and it was really hard. I had to let it go though.
I would say, so what's very interesting is that I don't regret any of those decisions. They were the right decisions at the time. And at the time I would have made the same decision a million times in a row. But High Rise has had extraordinary staying power. I'm still shocked by how much love there is for this product that we haven't really changed since, I'm not sure when the last update was, 2012 or something like that, maybe 2010. I'm not quite sure exactly when we finished. Maybe it's a little bit later than that. Anyway, actually, yeah, it was later than that. It was like 2017 or something. Anyway, long time. Multi-million-dollar business. I hear from people all the time, can you please make a new High Rise? Can you please make a new High Rise? So I think had we kept that product line up, it wouldn't be as big as Basecamp. Basecamp's a real big win in a lot of ways, but it'd be damn big. But I don't regret it.
High Rise, just so you know, if you go, so this is how I know it's big. If you go to Google and you just Google High Rise CRM, the first 4 results that are sponsored are competitors: HubSpot, High Level, Nutshell, Monday. They're all bidding on your keywords because they know that you guys, you're popular.
Yeah, and this is a product that's not changed in forever, essentially. So it's interesting. There's just a lot of love for it, and people try all these other CRM tools, and they're all way too complicated, way too complex. And people come back to High Rise because it barely does anything in a sense, but it does just the things that people really need. Like, who did I talk to? What did I say? What did they say? When do we need to follow up next? Like, so that is it.
With a product like this, then why wouldn't you today, knowing everything you've just said to me, why wouldn't you hire an awesome GM, give them a couple $100,000, just say, listen, make this a $20 million business? Like, why can't you do something with it right now?
So it's a great question. Couple thoughts. One is, we tend not to build things that we don't use internally. We don't have any use for a CRM tool. We just don't. And that's one of the reasons why it kind of stopped getting developed, is because we just don't use CRM tools. And so philosophically, I have a hard time getting excited about building things that we're not going to use. And then you end up building things that other people want. And then they end up getting very convoluted, and you can't really judge if they're any good or not. I just don't like that approach. We have many, many things that we use, that we need, that we want to exist in the world still, that don't exist, that we're going to build and that we're going to use. I feel like that's a better use of our time. Now, to your point about hiring a GM, I wish it was that easy, man. Maybe it is, and I don't know where to look for people like this. Okay, but um, we found it to be very hard to find. We actually spun High Rise off to another team, essentially that model. Um, Great guy. He put together a great team. They just couldn't get any traction. The product just couldn't. They couldn't make it happen, and we ended up pulling it back. And I don't like where the product is now because of the work they did on it. Again, not their fault. They went in a direction, but now we're left with the thing that we wouldn't have taken it in that direction, and now we have to service it in a certain way. It's just not as easy as it sounds. Now, again, there may be people who are really, really, I think we're really, really good at building things we need. There might be other people out there who are really, really good finding GMs to run things. I actually don't know how to do that. I haven't found that I know where those people are. And the idea of hiring someone and then building a team around them, it's very expensive. It seems very complicated to me and just ultimately not worth it given the other things that we have going on. So part of this is just having a discipline to say, there's money there, I'm sure, but I don't do this just for that. That's not what this is about. We have a lot of things we want to put out in the world that we're also going to be fired up to use ourselves. And I'd rather just focus my energy and attention on that.
So it sounds based on that you're kind of not doing the holdco thing at all. Like you're not seeing
No.
37 signals as a hey, let's have 20 things and we'll hire people to run them. Like you actually want to have your hand in all these things, right?
Um, I want to have, they're not holding companies. I'd like to make more products. We're going to actually start to make, as I mentioned, more and more products again. But we're going to do them differently this time. We're going to keep them extraordinarily simple. And we're thinking about them with like just not that much surface area, but more depth. So just focusing on a few things and just doing them extraordinarily well. And I think that they can be very manageable under our umbrella with the people we have internally. So we're not hiring more people to do this. We can build products from start to finish with 3 people. We've mastered the way to do this in about 6 months. We can build brand new product every 6 months with 3 people. We now know how to do this. Now, at that point, teams can run the products themselves for a while. I'm involved. Brian, who's our sort of head of strategy, he's involved in overseeing product. David, my business partner, helps oversee product. We have enough people at the high level to oversee multiple products at the same time, and enough people who are on the teams who are driven and have enough experience to know how to improve the product on their own, that I think we can do this without like literal separate business units and all the structure that's required around that. We have one customer service team that services all our products. We don't have separate teams for separate products. I don't want to have a lot of verticals. I feel like that's where you get a lot of complexity. That's where companies balloon in size. That's where you have a lot of you're repeating structures over and over and over and over. I'd rather have people move around and play with this product for a while and then try this product out. When I mean play and try, I mean work on. So you sort of cross-pollinate. I just find that to be more interesting than having these verticals. And I think when you have fiefdoms, you end up having people defending themselves and defending their budgets in ways. I just don't want to get into that kind of business. I'm not interested in that. So I think we can manage this stuff ourselves the way we run things.
So it feels like your checklist, if I had to boil down kind of how you think about these things, number one, it has to be a product that you selfishly want to use yourself.
Yes.
Number two, you have to be able to manage it with your team of 4 or 5 high level people. You need to be able to kind of see it happen. And the other thing is there needs to be some very broad use of product-led growth because you don't have any kind of a sales team. Feels like you don't want to spend a whole lot of time convincing people to use these products. They kind of have to move themselves. Are there other? So are those right? And are there other things that you also look for?
We don't have any salespeople. It's all word of mouth, self-service. People sign up and buy the stuff online on our website, and they're on their own. And that sounds scary, but it's not. Our products are extraordinarily simple on purpose. We don't want to make things that are convoluted and complex and require a lot of handholding or require a lot of sales or require customization. We don't do anything like that. So yes, the products we think about that we do are the ones that we want for ourselves. And we recognize that we're not special. If we have a need, if we're not finding it in the market, or if things are too complicated or complex or expensive, other people probably have the same desires and needs than we do, right? So we make things for them. and for us at the same time. And then we can judge quality directly versus by proxy. If you're imagining what someone else needs, you don't really ever know if they're fully satisfied, and they keep asking for things because they don't really know how to explain what they want. And then you end up going on these wild goose chases. So it's nice when we make our own thing. Second, like they need to be tight, simple concepts. So small, manageable. They need to be like, aha, like where has this been my whole life? Like, why has it been so hard to do this? Now it's not. This is great. They need also to be novel. There needs to be certain novelties in these things. There are a billion products out there already in the world. The world does not need another product like another product. There might be a new product in a category. That's what we try to do, is do new things in a category. But I'm not going to put something out in the world that essentially already exists.
You,
So
you
that's
talk
another
about
thing.
like you talk about this stuff like you're an artist, so you're not just an entrepreneur and a businessman, but it's and I mean that in a positive way. Like this
Yeah.
is art to you.
Yeah, it's not this is not your fault. It just the term sounds pretentious in a sense when it comes to business. When people are like, I'm an artist, but we do have a sense of there's a sense of intention. It's not purely like we're capitalists for sure, but it's not purely about maximizing profit, maximizing dollars. We're leaving a lot of money on the table. There's no question about it, and I'm totally comfortable with that. It's more interesting for us to do really well, to do enough, do well, and make things the way we want to make them and run our business the way we want to run our business, which is why we don't have investors. We don't have someone else's timeline. We've been in this for 25 years. We've been profitable every year. We have very high margins. We keep our company small. All these things that allow us to explore without being afraid. I think one of the things that's really beautiful about having, well padded margins is that we can afford to do something like once in Campfire and see if it works. And if it doesn't, it's okay too. The worst thing is to be on, not the worst thing, but a hard thing to be is on a razor thin margin where you basically are afraid to experiment, because if you go down the wrong path, it could sink you. I just don't want to be in that situation. So, but we do want to place a lot of bets. So we're just very thoughtful about the things that we know we can judge quality wise. We know what's good. We know what's necessary. We know what the world needs because we need it, versus imagining what someone else needs. Like, for example, we would not go out, even though I'd love to do this in a sense, because whenever I go to the doctor's office, like I look at the screen that they like, whatever software they're using, and it's just like horrifyingly bad. And I talked to my doctor about it. He's like, yeah, this is the worst thing ever. We're forced to use it. But I would never build a medical record system because we just don't use that. And I'm just not interested enough in that to do that. So if that's where the art comes in, perhaps like that we choose what we do, we don't just follow the money, but we choose what we do and we say no to, and we do it in a craft driven way, then okay, I'll accept the title
You're
with
an artist
caveats.
in the best sense of the word,
All right.
and so tell me what you think about the whole holdco model and the obsession around I want to build, I want to have 7 companies, and I want to hire CEOs. Like, is there logic to that, and do you see kind of an upside to it versus do you think everyone on Twitter is just drunk on wanting to have way too much for no reason?
I don't know what people on Twitter are what their motivations are. I think the holding company model can be very, very effective and very successful. I mean, clearly, like Berkshire Hathaway is a great model, of course. What Andrew Wilkinson's doing with Tiny, or they're buying a bunch of companies. We sold them a company once called We Work Remotely. I think it can be very fruitful and very exciting if that's the kind of person you are and the kind of thing you want to run. So, I mean, I don't want to run that. That would I wouldn't be interested in running dozens of companies or managing dozens of independent groups running product lines. It doesn't do it for me. For Andrew, maybe it does. For Warren Buffett, maybe it does. For other people, there's many, many, many companies. LVMH, there's all these huge luxury brands. There's all these companies that own a bunch of companies, right? It's a very successful model. It's just not the model that I'm after. So I'm not here to say like it's good or bad. It's different. And you meaning whoever is listening, you need to figure out the kind of thing that you want to do. For me, I want to have one company that makes multiple products that I'm overseeing and part of. For someone else, it might be they want to buy existing products and make them more profitable, or streamline them, or group them together and find some efficiencies. Great, like just lots of ways to do this sort of thing, but figure out how you want to do it and not how you think you're supposed to do it because that's how you've heard other people doing it, I think that's where you can get yourself in trouble.
And the dirty little secret in all these holdcos, whether it's Tiny or Berkshire Hathaway or Constellation Software or you name it, on and on and on, is that 70-80% of the revenue and profits usually come from one or two or three companies. Like they have a big portfolio, but they certainly got rich off one, and then maybe they have two or three now that are bringing in most of the money, and the rest are really just bets. It's not like you're making the exact same amount of money from all these things.
Yeah, you can even see this in like huge luxury conglomerates. There's like, one or two brands that really bring in everything. And then the other ones sort of are part of the constellation of the brands, because it gives the holding company more power because they have more companies and more control over the market and the whole thing. So yeah, it's the same thing is true in the VC model, right? In a fund, you've got one or two winners, big winners, and they kind of take care of all the ones that didn't pan out. This is a pretty common. It's pretty common just in all groups of anything. You've got it's the same thing in music. You buy an album. There's like 2-3 good songs out of 12. But you buy the album. That's why albums are packaged that way. Now, of course, there's singles, which are a more direct way of saying just buy the hits, right? And everything's changed, of course, with streaming and the whole thing. But historically, albums had a couple good hits, and those are the ones that got on the radio, and those are the ones that sold the record, and then the other ones were like, other songs. So that's true. That's been true for us. We just want to keep placing more bets, but in our own way, in our own method, under our own umbrella, with the same team, versus, I think, making it more complicated to have entire groups that aren't working out and have to figure out how to support those. It wouldn't make my day, let's just say.
You have your hit songs, and then you have songs where when they play them in the concert, that's when you go to the bathroom because you
Right.
don't know the song.
Right. It's basically hits business. And so is like the NBA. Like you've got a few awesome teams and a few incredible more than a few great players, but like there's some teams that just aren't very good, and you're never going to have a league full of incredible teams. You're in any collection of things, some things are going to float to the top and some things aren't. It's just how it is. So I think
it's a bell curve. You're always going to have a slope.
And this is why, in my opinion, if somehow you've struck gold or lightning is struck or whatever metaphor you want to use, like ride that, man. Because, we've been riding Basecamp for 20 years. The current version of Basecamp is the best version of Basecamp it's ever been. I believe it's the best product in the market in its category. Of course, I'm biased, but I truly believe that. We're going to ride this huge hit. This does not strike twice. So we've had other hits, but nothing like this. So the idea that someone creates a successful company and then they want to sell it to start the next one, like to me, I get people want to do that. There's serial entrepreneurs. I understand that. I've met so many people at this point in my career now who've had big hits, sold those businesses, and wish they hadn't, even though they're wealthy and the whole thing. They're like, they can never quite get back to the thing they had before. Once you let that go, it's very, very hard to do it twice. You almost never see someone really do it twice in a big way. Occasionally it happens, just like the bell curve. There's a few people who can pull that off. But if you have a hit, stick with it, in my opinion, and ride it for as long as you can and keep nurturing it, improving it, and supporting it. But don't think that like that was easy and this next one's going to happen too. It's probably most likely not going to happen.
How often do you get calls from acquirers, PE firms, strategics that just want to buy your company?
We get a lot. I get probably 2 emails a week still from
Two emails
VCs.
a week.
Yeah, VCs in private equity, and oftentimes it's sort of the same ones that check in frequently. Other times,
And
it's
these
new
are legit
ones.
people. These aren't just
Yeah.
like random. Like they actually know who you are and what your company is.
Yes, yeah, they're legit. What's interesting though is we've been around for so long now, 25 years, that I'll hear from the same VC firm that wrote us 4 years ago, but it's a new person there because the old associate's gone and they don't know that someone else contacted. So there's some of that going on, some cyclical nature that we've just been around for a long time. So we've been hit up by the same PE and VC firms, and then there's new ones that come in, and there's like family offices that write and whatnot. But it's just as of this point, it's not been an interesting option for us. We did sell a little piece of the company to Jeff Bezos back in 2007, and or six or seven. I can't remember now. And that's the only money that we've ever taken in, although it didn't go into the company. It went to me and David as sold some of our founder shares. So the company's always been self-funded. But after that point, just no interest in taking money. Now,
Has Bezos
inevitably,
ever come back for potentially more shares, or he's happy
I
with
wouldn't
where he's
sell him
at?
more. I'd like to buy his shares back, frankly. But we've tried, and he's not interested. He knows he's got a good deal here. So um, you know, ideally, I don't know. Never mind. It's
Would
like
you?
I was going
Well,
to talk more about the deal, but
let me ask you the
yeah,
question then. Would you like? So, have you ever sat down and had a serious conversation about selling?
yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I was going to go with this, which is no. But we've been doing this for 25 years. Like naturally, like it's unlikely that we would do this for 25 more. I mean, I just turned 50, so I'm not going to be 75 running this company. Clearly, um,
You
I
don't
don't
have like
know.
a single gray hair. You're
Oh,
50.
I have gray hairs, dude.
Oh,
Go on the
okay. There you
side.
go. You got
Yeah,
to zoom
I've
in.
got them. My beard is gray. I just kind of anyway. I've got plenty of gray hair. So uh, you know, at some point, you just like the company's not going to. And companies either like get bought, get sold, they die. They don't last forever. I mean, some last a long, 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 long time. But in the software world, especially, to have a company that's been around for 35, 45, 55 years, super rare. So there will come a point where David and I decide that we don't want to do this anymore, as is natural. And at that point, I mean, we're not just going to shut the thing down. So at that point, we'd either sell, merge, or I mean, we're not going to go IPO. That's not kind of a path we want to take. So eventually, the company would be sold. I'm assuming. But right now, we're fired up and excited to do what we've been doing for 25 years.
And are there any decisions that you make today that inform the future in that sense? So do you say, hey, we should, like, if we're thinking about selling in 5 years, we should probably do this or do that, or do you just kind of run and you'll see what happens?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the point where we would set like a schedule for that because we're not selling the company. But I'm imagining if we said like, okay, we want to sell the company in 5 years or something like this, you might. I don't really know what we would do differently, but I could imagine that if you're trying to maximize, if you're the kind of people who are trying to maximize the payout, you're going to want to probably amp up growth as much as possible, probably lose some margin and pour more money into customer acquisition to show more and more growth. So you have higher growth rates because you tend to get a higher multiple. So I would imagine that you could do that if you wanted to. I just don't. That's just not interesting to us. I don't want to game any system. Whatever we end up selling the company for at some points down the road, like that'll be fair. And we'll just do our best to kind of keep building the company as best we can and have the best products and take care of our customers and take care of our employees as best we can. And wherever the chips fall, they will fall and that'll be fine. Our cards or whatever metaphor you want to use. So um, now if we were going to sell next year, maybe I would give you a different answer because then it'd be real, but it's not real. It's hypothetical.
But you
So
also
I don't
wouldn't tell
really
me if
know.
you're going to sell next year. So
I
it'd be the
wouldn't,
same
unless you
answer.
want to make me an offer.
I might want to make it up for that high rise. That I'm still thinking about high rise right now. Let me finish off with the whole kind of you're the model of the bootstrap. Like you are like the bootstrap times 100. You're like an example of a bootstrapper that did it with one single product essentially, and you've been doing it for now 20 plus years. Is there a case that you can make for you should go out and raise VC? If there's someone listening right now who's about to start a company, why should they raise VC, or is there any scenario?
Um, there is. I would say if you're building something that requires significant capital investment, you're doing a hardware business, you are inventing a self-driving car, or you're like, let's say you're in the food business and you want to you need to open a restaurant or food packing or whatever it might be. Like if you really have to buy machines and buy space and whatever and make big biotech things like that, like you're going to need money. If you're going to start a software company or consulting business or some IT thing, you need like 3 people and laptops. Like you don't, and I mean, you should be able to come up with that money. Like if you can't come up with that money, maybe you can ask a friend or family and whatever, but do not sell pieces of your business to get some laptops. You just don't, it's so cheap to start a business today. That's virtual essentially, which is what we make. We make virtual stuff. We make bits and bytes and software and pixels on the screen, right? But again, yeah, if you're going to make hardware now, but even in that case, like for example, if you're in a food business, you should probably look into renting part of a commercial kitchen versus existing kitchen versus putting your own equipment in. But there are businesses clearly that require major capital expenditures, and if you need the money, you need the money, but you don't need it when it's just like software. That's the thing that bugs me the most. Is like the businesses that need it the least feel like they can't start without it. I don't get that.
Yeah, and you just hit the nail on the head there. The answer I give anytime someone asks me a question like that, I say it's all about capital expenditure. If you legitimately require huge capital expenditures at the beginning, that you can't even start without it. You're building rocket ships, you're doing biotech. Okay, I get that. But if you're going to say I'm going to raise money so that I can run advertising or get my first 100 customers, like, dude, if you need VC to get 100 customers, like, don't even bother starting.
You're screwed. Like get out there and sell. One of my favorite things is do you remember RX Bar? You know RX
Of
Bar?
course, yeah, yeah.
I think maybe
I
you've
wrote,
even
I
written
wrote the
up this.
story on that, man. I remember it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you wrote the original story or whatever, but I know you've mentioned it. But I love the story about that. They the two guys, Peter and I think it was his brother or something. Anyway, they're trying to go. They want to get VC money. They've had this bar and they want to get VC money, and they asked their dad, and the dad's like, "Dude, go sell 1,000 effing bars.
That's
Get
it.
out on the road and
And that
sell
was the
some
exact line.
product." Yeah, yeah. Sell some product. Shut up and sell some product. Like you don't need money. Go out there and hit. And so what they did was I think they hit CrossFit gyms. Like they found like their niche, and it was beautiful. And they made it work. And that was the best advice. It's tough love, but great advice. And so when people think it's like, if I only had a VC backed whatever, I would sell. No, you will sell because you'll get out there and sell. You'll get out there and talk. You'll get out there and hit the pavement. You'll get out there and share whatever it is that you're going to do. You've got to do that work. And the money. Now, granted, if you've got a mortgage and you can't spend 8 months hitting the pavement and selling nothing if you've got kids in school and a mortgage, I get all that. Like that's hard too, obviously. But that's why you should probably have a job and then on the side start to sell something or start to work on something if you can, if your employment agreement allows that. So you got to figure out how to make it work. But the idea that a bunch of money is going to solve fundamental problems, it's going to create fundamental problems. That's what too much money is going to have or happen.
It's gonna create problems, and it's gonna create lofty expectations that you just don't need because there's already enough stuff you got to worry about.
It's hard enough. It's so hard to begin with. Like that's the thing people don't get. Like they get money. The way I think of it is that you just took on a huge cost. You think you got the money, but you actually you have a cost, a huge cost, expectations, timeline, everything's accelerated, growth targets, like all the things, and it's gonna be so much harder now.
I'll
You
tell
didn't
you
make it easier.
the craziest PR term. So when VCs started, and I mean this is how they describe it, but it's like you're raising equity, you're selling equity in your company. The term equity is so misleading. It is effectively debt because equity that has a liquidation preference of 3x, 4x. So yeah, you got to make 3x your money back before I get a penny. That's called debt in real life. That's not equity. We're not partners, buddy. We're not
Yeah.
partners. You work for me, is what the VC is thinking.
That's what happens. And people go, they want to be an entrepreneur. And then one of the first steps they make is to not be an entrepreneur. They essentially go and raise a bunch of money, and essentially you're now working for someone else. It's your own thing in a sense, but you're working for someone else because you're on their timelines against their expectations. They have to return money to their LPs. Like you're working for a bunch of people all of a sudden. And I'd rather think about it as like, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm working for my employees to keep making sure I can pay them, but I don't need to pay someone who's way wealthier than me already. That's essentially what you're doing when you borrow money from a VC. Again, there are some cases where it makes sense. And I like many VCs that I know personally. I like them as people. I don't have any problem with like VCs. It's a necessary, hugely necessary component of the financial system, of the business environment, of the ecosystem. It's just, you don't want to go there for the wrong reasons. And I think a lot of people think they need to go there, and they think they need permission to start a business by getting the support and backing of someone who can give you a bunch of money that you probably don't need.
Jason Fried, we all want to be like you.
No, you
Where?
don't.
Oh yeah. Where can we find you online?
I'm on Twitter or X at Jason Fried. It's Fried. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I have a newsletter, world.hey.com/Jason. And then our own websites, 37 Signals, Basecamp, once.com, a bunch of other places, hey.com. You can find me in all those places.
Thank you so much for doing this, Jason. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, John. It's great.